I always suspected that photographers must have some kind of particular relationship with mortality, because you had to keep things from dying. My work is about the theater of life in different chapters. And because the chapters are big chapters, this needs to be a bigger body of work. It can't just be this and that photograph in a certain way. When I got my first camera, which was a Minolta, SLR camera, the first roll, I thought, well, what am I going to photograph? And I walked around and I thought to myself, I'm going to photograph things that are hidden. So I photographed windows with curtains. I saw a bicycle that had been wrapped up in plastic, which was just something. I pointed something where something is covered so that it cannot be seen clearly. It's a juvenile, I don't know. In retrospect, it's funny, and I think maybe the idea of penetrating something, so showing something that others don't see in that manner, that's a principal idea of art. The emotional level of a young adult was something that intuitively drew me to drawing and painting, just to express myself. And I didn't, at that time, I had no plan. I didn't have any idea I want to become an artist or anything like that. I believe very much in the idea or like a strategy, which of course also at the time I didn't know, step by step. The next problem is the next problem, or the next question is the next question, and you don't have a plan. When I was in high school, it was the time of pop music, the Beatles, the Stones, the Kings, and all this environment. I learned a clarinet and saxophone from age 10. I had two fantastic teachers in high school. The music teacher started a school jazz band that I played in. The art teacher was somebody who had himself been at the Academy in Düsseldorf. And he liked what I did in art class, because mostly I didn't follow what he wanted us to do. I did something else. And he always smiled and sort of walked by and said, yeah, he made it. Yeah, so he was supportive. Artists work independently, and from when I was 13 years old, I thought I couldn't imagine to work in an environment where somebody else would tell me what to do. I thought I want to have my own decision what I'm doing, and since I think at the time that was, of course, not so evident to me, but when I look back at it now, I think that many professions or people seem to be, to me, somewhat conflicted in what had happened, in the Holocaust and fascism in Germany. And I just was very attracted by art. The first impressions I made that had to do with looking at art, not in reproduction, was at the Museum Ludwig in Cologne, because we moved to Cologne, or outside of Cologne, in 1965, I was 10 years old. And then when I was a little bit older, 12 or 13, I started to go. My father worked nearby the Cologne Cathedral. And so when I went, after school, when I went into town, I often went to the Ludwig Museum, where you could see works of art from the 13th century until pop art. And of course, when you're in that age, all artworks are enigmas. I think I was very formed by that for myself to evaluate what do I like here, and and of course for some reason things ended up in a museum, so they must have somebody made it come here. I studied the first three terms after the orientation department at the academy with Gerhard Richter, because I was still painting, and I thought, okay, who are the painters in this building? And Richter was not as famous as he is now, but he was the biggest challenge. So I said I might as well go for the biggest challenge. And he, so I showed him, I set up all my paintings in the room in his class, and he came in and said, "Are these all yours?" I said, "Yes, okay, you can come." And then when I was there, I continued to photograph, which I'd started before, in order to use my photographs for the paintings. And then it didn't really, they became more realistic. And I knew about the photorealism in painting, which I found really boring. So I thought somehow that doesn't really work. I worked sometimes at Richter's studio, so that showed me I felt so supported in a way. At least he didn't mind me having me around. And but these situations also had a lot of anxiety. So it's not, it's not that everything is an easy move, so to speak. Anyway, so I was. Then I went when Bernd Becher came. I decided to go there, which Richter supported. All of a sudden, there was a scholarship to go to New York, and everybody said to me, "Well, you photograph streets, so like you have to apply." My parents gave me money to buy my own camera, and Hilla Becher had found a hotel where the other student who got the scholarship and we shared a room in this hotel for $60 a week. But I was really scared in New York. Like the first 4 weeks, I was completely silenced. I could not. The only person I could talk to was the other fellow recipient and Hilla and her son. I could not. When I was in the street, I was completely shut up by that environment. That was in December '77. There was a lot of snow in Manhattan, and Manhattan looked really old, like an old 105-year-old widow. It was very strange. I had no idea that New York looked like that. Gradually, I thought, okay, I reminded myself I'm here to photograph. And the first time I left the hotel was the tripod and the camera mounted, and set the camera up in the middle of the street. And one of these insane guys walked up to me and threatened me and scared me to death. And I was like, oh my God, this is really. But then, like a second later, he moved on. And it was a very strange, a very particular thing as an experience to be to have an existence in this strange slice of being the guy who stands in the middle of the street with a 20-kilo camera equipment and has to pay attention that he doesn't get overrun by a car, by watching the traffic light. I really had this program that I followed. I made a lot of experiences of your generous liberal behavior of people. In Düsseldorf, when I photographed in Düsseldorf, each time a couple of people came up to me and said to me, who gave you permission to do this? Who gave you permission to set up the camera here? Just normal citizens. Whereas in New York, people would come up to me, hey, what are you doing? And when I told them, they said, this is fantastic, and very, very positive. So it was a very, very, very rewarding time. The absence of people in the street photographs that had partly practical reason, because I worked with a small aperture to get the biggest depth of field. You're 22 or 32, and when you do that and you have a low speed sheet film 5x7 inch 25 ASA, you end up with an exposure time of, let's say, 5 seconds or so. And if you have people moving, it doesn't work. But also, what I really meant is what the idea. It wasn't an idea. It was just a feeling, an intuition that I noticed that the environment, the built environment, is a mirror of the people's mentality, the people who occupy that space or who build that space, and that becomes clearer with no human figure in it. And that is us, or that is them. And you don't have to see the people. Something that really gave me another idea of life. At the time, I went quite often to the Empire Roller Disco in Queens, which was like an entirely black community of dancing on skates with a discotheque environment. And I fell completely in love with that environment and went there maybe 10, 15, 20 times and was maybe one of 3 white people in that whole crowd, and saw for the first time the kind of joy that I never had noticed in Germany in my life. That was really astonishing and very rewarding. I believe my particular ability is to identify with the goal, like to identify with what I look at. So I can be, for a particular moment, I can devote myself to what I look at that I'm in love with, and then I can act as a part-time chameleon and become this place. In that respect, photography has the ability to bring places together that are not even in the neighborhood of each other. You talk about the other existence, the other mentality, the other time, the other people, the phenomena, and identity that is not mine, but I'm so attracted to it that I enjoy to show it in its your own characteristics, even though it's through my eyes. All my different travels that I made, they happened for a variety of different reasons. I was brought by people to places. People recommended that I should come or that I should go. It all has to do with relationships. For example, my longest time friend Janice Guy, I went to see her in Rome. I stayed with Janice 3 weeks in her apartment and photographed. Then she moved to Naples, and she said to me, like, you have to come to Naples. This would be fantastic for you. So in '88, I decided, okay, I wasn't successful yet. Like I had, there was no mobile phones, there was no email, there was nothing. So I just had somebody check my answering machine once a week, and I left and spent 10 weeks in Naples, staying with Janice. She shared a house with a restorer, with a painting restorer. That changed my life. Those 10 weeks in Naples brought me to photograph streets in Naples, but also I made this portrait of Giulia Zorzetti, that restorer, and her colleagues. That opened the box to color photography and to this idea of painting and figurative painting and people that I photograph in the same environment. Before that, in 1985, a friend of mine did a first gallery show in Japan, and he suggested to the galleries to do a show with me. So I sent them some contact sheets. They wrote back, if you want, you could have an opening in April 1986. And I thought, wow, I always wanted to go to China, but if it's Japan, I might as well take the opportunity. That started a 16-year relationship with that gallery, and I think a total of 17 trips to Japan, which although the whole thing developed really step by step. Yeah, things happen by intuition a lot. I mean, when I'm in the beginning of a body of work and I have the big excitement, that I think, oh, I see something, I see a field that I think is worthwhile to talk about and use. Then, that's a thrilling moment, because there's an open field, and step by step you expand, and things just happen spontaneously, and it feels okay, that somehow makes sense, but I don't know yet whether it will become a body of work or not. When I did the first family portraits, I did them just because I was stayed with my gallerist in Japan and an artist colleague in Edinburgh where I stayed, and I thought, what shall I give them as a thank you? Well, I'll make a family photograph, not knowing that might be not so far away from the street pictures. In a certain way, it's character, it's history, it's relationship, it's culture, and it's a confrontation. It's sort of a dual, thing. They see me as a person in that situation. I see them. And in between, there's this very uncomfortable periods where I don't know what will come next, and people often ask, what are you doing next? And many years ago, I always found that embarrassing because I thought you always have to show that you have a new plan and you go forward, and of course, but I don't do that anymore because sometimes I don't know. Yeah. Maybe I went through different chapters of existence, the public environment, the urban characteristics that are built by community, and then that's a longer history. I mean, that's a kind of, your cities change, but it's a slow change. It's it has quite a long curve. The family, in a way, is sort of the primary group, where the idea of community and this education of being human being with other beings starts. So that family has a, this is like 2 generations or 3. This is sort of a shorter curve, and maybe in the museum pictures it was something about this game of you're locating yourself within history by having a picture of yourself by looking at pictures of another time. So more or less, what are people looking at there? What are they looking for? And I started to make pictures in museums in this turning. At least for me, it felt like a turning, like a turntable in around 1990. By photographing it, you're photographing these works and being an artist who makes actually a picture of constellations of museum visitors. There's my picture, and put these two layers together. And I think that there's a few paintings. For example, I made one picture later in '92 at Galleria dell'Accademia in Venice, with this huge Veronese painting that covers the entire wall. When I look at my photograph, it looks like a very alive scene with all the museum visitors. Occasionally, when I'm in Venice and I come into this room, I'm shocked because I see much more the age of that painting that I don't see in my photograph of it. That's a particular mechanics to make something that's old seem more recent, and what's happening now seem more old. So they move this way, and then they're not like that anymore, but they're like that together. Of course, I'm very under the impressions of what's going on politically in the last few years. I took a particular. It was very intentional that during the Trump years, I wanted to show the dead animal photographs for the first time in New York, because I felt it's important to remind people that we all have to die, and also the bad people will die. It will not last forever. Well, the power of the images is that you have the freedom to look at them or not, and you can spend time with them or not. You can spend a lot of time with them or not. Pictures, they can be like batteries. You sort of all the love and devotion and the intuition that went into the picture it's like a battery, and when you look at it, it gives you energy, and it sort of it jumps. That energy jumps. It jumps over, and it's nourishing, and it's a solace. Yeah, I mean the times are very different now with all the a number of pictures that are being produced, and makes me feel like like an old specialist. Yeah, I feel like an old gardener who creates some new species by cross fertilization, and then all of a sudden you have a new kind of grass or a new kind of tree of flower or something like that. And I could not imagine today to start as a photographer. I mean, the main thing you have to have is a reason. Like when you have a real reason, then you might as well. But I think that's ultimately the starting point. What is your reason to do it? That's also not only important as a photographer or person who makes photographs. That's in general for art, because it's such an open field. I mean, there's of course brackets of art history, but it has to come from within. You cannot calculate art. I mean, you can, but then it will not survive.